I'm very proud to introduce our keynote speaker of the day, Bob Mueller, who is co-anchor of News 2. That's the ABC affiliate here in Nashville at the 4 o'clock and 6 p.m. newscast, and a host of the Sunday morning political show This Week with Bob Mueller. He's been with News 2 for 35 years. During this time, Bob's reporting skills have earned him numerous honors and distinctions. He is a 10-time Emmy Award-winning journalist. He's also winner of the coveted George Foster Peabody National Award for Investigative Reporting and has been honored with 3 National Telly Awards and 2 National Communicator Awards. He has the distinction of bringing his viewers some major historical events. He covered the first space shuttle launch in 1981. He was there when President Jimmy Carter returned to Plains, Georgia after leaving the White House. He was the first reporter to talk with Jimmy Carter about the release of the hostages in Iran. Besides covering several Democratic and Republican conventions and 2 presidential inaugurations, Bob has brought his audiences one-on-one interviews with Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Al Gore, Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush. Bob and his wife have a daughter, Mary, and 2 sons, Will and Nick. It is our pleasure to welcome to the Lipscomb campus and to THSPA, Mr. Bob Mueller. You're fine.
I brought props.
Thanks.
How are you folks? I'm doing fantastic, and I really want to thank you for letting me be part of your event today. It's always fun for me to be able to speak to young folks who are interested in doing what I do. And this is such a great time for you guys because technology is just fantastic right now. There are so many outlets. You don't have to do just what I do. You can be in television, you can be in radio, you can have a webcast, a podcast, you can work for an industrial complex that does production, you can produce your own movies. I mean, it's fantastic the opportunities you each have, and I hope you embrace technology and use technology. How many of you folks out there have one of these, have a smartphone? You can do everything on your smartphone. We'll do this here real quick because this is what's so cool about this selfie time. Wave. Hang on, one more time. We'll get everybody in. All right. See, I'm an old guy. I'm trying to figure out how to use this thing. Come on. There we go. And there it is. Okay. Well, when I started, this was my cell phone. You cranked it, and you shot it. 3 minutes of film, 100 feet, take it back and process it. Half an hour later, you would cut it with a scissors or a razor blade, glue it together with tape and glue, put it on a spool. That was what we showed on the air. Pass it around and give you an idea of what this thing was like. I know a lot of you folks are trying to figure out your careers, and maybe you have and haven't what you exactly want to do. That's okay. There's so many opportunities out there. I've been very lucky. I knew at an early age what I wanted to do, and this was it. When I was just a child, President Kennedy was assassinated, and I remember being in my kitchen under my parents' table watching that 4 days of tragedy coverage, and I knew at that time that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be one of those people who told those stories. When I was in high school, your age, I was really lucky because a friend of mine in high school's father owned a little bitty radio station where I grew up. And I started hanging out at this little 1,000-watt AM radio station, and he's let me go on the air to do the weather report and the farm report and the hospital report, and I was hooked. I was just wanted to do this, and I worked there the last couple years of my high school time. When I went to college, I immediately went to the college radio station, signed up, and worked all 4 years at my college radio station. I did play-by-play for sports, I covered news, I was a disc jockey, I worked in production for the TV facility, I was the news director, I was the sports director, and if I have one real piece of advice, that would be it. Be broad-based. Try everything. You may think you know what you want to do. You maybe want to be a producer or be an anchor or be a writer. Try it all. If you can edit tape, if you can edit digital, if you can be a photographer, if you can be a reporter, all those things will help you sell yourself down the road, make you more sellable. The more you can do, especially now in this industry where we don't just do one thing anymore, we do a lot of different things, the more you'll be able to sell yourself. I am privileged what I do, and if you like history, you will love this business. I cover history. You heard a little bit of a few of the things that I've been fortunate enough to do. I've worked in St. Louis, Peoria, Chattanooga, and Nashville, small to medium-sized cities. But from those cities, from this job here in Nashville and those cities, I've been able to cover stories in Afghanistan, in Russia, in Germany, in Japan, in London, in Africa. I've been to basically every state in this country, most of the major cities. I got to cover the first space shuttle launch, which, by the way, they told us after it was over with, we were too close, and had there been an accident, we would have been killed. They since moved everybody back for the following launches, about 2 more miles. I've covered the war in Afghanistan. I've covered the war in Iraq. I've covered presidential candidates, presidential campaigns, presidential inaugurations, presidential conventions. And I tell you this not because it's important what I did. This is what you can do. And you don't have to be in New York or Chicago. You can do it from here. You can do it from anywhere, especially with this technology. You can do it from your home. So I encourage you to dream big and reach those stars because they are achievable. If I have another piece of advice, it's we all do interviews, and that's going to be part of what your job is. A key to interviewing successfully, we all come up with 10 questions we want to ask, and we'll ask those 10 questions. And it's good to have a list. But really, the more important thing is to listen. Key is to listen. You ask the first question, and the answer, if you miss the answer and you ask the second question, you may miss something key in there. It may take you in a whole different direction, a better direction. You may get new information from that one answer. You may never ask the rest of the 9 questions. That's okay. Be agile. Go with the flow. Be aware that the information you're getting may not be what you thought you were going to get, but it might be better than what you found at the first time. Everybody asks me about the most important aspect of this job, and I take it very seriously. It, to me, is a trust. You have to have that bond with your audience. But the most important aspect to me is to always be prepared for the unexpected. Something out of the ordinary is always going to happen every day on this job, and you have to be prepared for it. I'm going to tell you a couple of stories that had some interesting aspects. When I was in Peoria, I was 22 years old. We got a call, police officer in trouble. Shots had been fired. We got in the car, raced to the scene. There we got there. Here the police car is, the door open, the blue light's going, the officer in a ditch, his gun drawn. We got there too early. I got out of the car, bam, bam, 2 bullets hit right next to me. I jumped in the ditch. The officer reached around, threw me his second gun and said, "Shoot back." I did not. I stayed very low. But expect the unexpected. Finally, the bullets stopped and we were okay. But just one of my very first experiences was that. Working in Chattanooga, small market, middle of the South, we were trying to do and putting together a documentary on the Ku Klux Klan. The white supremacist group in the 80s was coming back into fruition. It was growing again. I had this great idea that I wanted to interview David Duke. You may have heard his name. He's back in the news trying to endorse Donald Trump, who's trying to not have him endorse Donald Trump. He's a white supremacist. He was the leader of the KKK in the 70s and the 80s, this white supremacist group. So we're trying to figure out a way to get an interview with this guy. Why would this national leader of hate, want to talk to me out of Chattanooga? Well, we worked through some intermediaries, and sure enough, he said he would do it. So we had an interview lined up with David Duke, the man of hate. We wanted to find out why he believed this way. This was the documentary we were putting together. They told us, meet at this restaurant. Me and my photographer went to the restaurant. 3 guys come pulling up in a van. 3 guys armed with pistols. 3 guys who tell us, you want to interview David Duke? This is what you're going to do. You're going to get in the car. We're going to blindfold you and drive you away. If you took a look out from under the blindfold, we're going to shoot you. When we're done, we're going to blindfold you and bring you back. Those are the rules. You want to do it or not? I was young and stupid. I did it. We got in the car. They blindfolded us. We drove for about an hour. The car stopped. Felt the guy next to us with his guns. We get out, we're in the middle of a field and a dilapidated mobile home next to us. And I thought, well, here's where we die. David Duke walked out of that dilapidated mobile home. He was there. We sat down in this mobile home. It was ridiculously hot. Sweat was pouring off both of us. I'll never forget his eyes. They were just piercing. But we did the interview. He did the interview for this local reporter out of Chattanooga. We eventually won a documentary award for this thing. That wasn't the reason you do it, but the point of the story is you can get these things done. They took us back, blindfolded us, drove us back. We were fine. For the second part of the story, we went to a little town in Alabama. They were having a rally. The Ku Klux Klan had 500 members in their white sheets on one side of town. The Alabama State Troopers had 500 troopers on one side of town. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference, African American protesters, had 500 members on another side of town. There was a tank in the middle of the road. The protest march began. The Klan came in, the SCL came in, the troopers came in to keep the peace, and somebody fired a shot, and all you know what broke loose. We dove behind the blade of a bulldozer. Bullets were fired. The troopers moved in. A couple people were injured. Thankfully, no one was killed. Peace was restored. We were broadcasting live from that scene. I was at 25 on ABC News. We covered this story. No one else had it. Expect the unexpected. We survived. We got the story on the air. And it was just like I'm trying to point out, you never know what's around the corner. At my current job, I've been very fortunate. I went to Afghanistan with the 101st Airborne in 2002, in January 2002, only like 4 months after the 9/11 tragedies. And we went to tell the stories of the 101st. These were the first young soldiers going in to fight this war on terror after our country had been attacked. I'll show you, we're just a few days after the 15th anniversary. I know a lot of you were just babies when this was born and have its history to you, and that's part of the story. I'm going to show you some of the stories we did while we were there in a moment. But the importance was, these were our hometown folks going over there to fight for our freedom, and my job was to tell their stories back home. So we got on this massive transport plane. There's 400 soldiers. They're all young. They're all 19 years old. They're all kids. It's filled with tanks. Everybody's geared up. Well, they tell us we fly from Fort Campbell we fly over 9/11. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. But we fly over Ground Zero in New York. We look out the windows. It's still smoldering. This was only 3 months after the attack. End up in Germany, and then we fly into Kazakhstan and Russia, and then into Afghanistan. What they didn't tell us until we were in the air, this was going to be the first daylight landing of anybody in Afghanistan. The war was going on, and they hadn't landed anybody in the daytime because they were being shot at. They decided it was safe enough that we were going to be the guinea pigs. So they were telling us this was going to be a, quote, combat landing, a hot landing. What does that mean? Well, we all geared up, helmets, flak jackets. All the troops geared up, passed out ammunition. There was going to be a sentry group up front. They had a machine gun. When the plane landed and the front door came out, they were going to set up a perimeter. We were going to run out as fast as we could. They were going to give us cover fire if we needed it. We were going to run to the terminal. That's what we had to do. Plane lands hot, which means it comes in faster than normal. It hits the brakes, skids down the runway. The big door opens. Out goes the front set up of the perimeter. They get their guns out, and they come screaming at us, out, out, out. We run as fast as we can. Thankfully, make it to the terminal. No one was hurt. I tell you this again because it's so important that you understand, always be aware. A story, as you go to cover it, is always going to change. And as we stayed there, we learned so many things. It was freezing cold. There were no toilets. They used ditches. There was no running water. We didn't shower for 2 weeks. The final time we actually got to take a shower, we took a cold shower. It was ridiculously cold, but we did it. We had no food. We had K rations, which were pretty rough. We spent nights in this bombed-out terminal building, and every night mortar fire was coming in. They were terrible shots. We were always fine. We spent nights in the foxhole with these 101st soldiers, and they gave us their night vision goggles, and we could see the perimeter, and we could see the Taliban trying to breach the perimeter, trying to come in. We saw the fear in these 19-year-old kids' faces. We saw that they didn't want to be there, but they knew they had to be there, and this was part of their duty, and that was part of the story, telling that, and them overcoming that fear and doing what they had to do. It was a terrifying, exhilarating time. I'm glad I had the opportunity. It's one of the most moving and important stories that I got to cover in my career. And again, it's one of those things, we didn't know it was going to happen. It happened on a whim. I said yes and got to go. We did have to get 13 shots before we left. My photographer passed out from the medication. It was a little bit painful. I began in this business with manual typewriters and film cameras like that. I've transformed to videotape and computers, and now we're in the digital age where you can do everything literally on this iPhone. And it's such an advancement and such a more of an ease to do the same thing. The message is what's important. We're the watchdogs out there. We're trying to make sure people do what they say they do. We're protecting citizens from government waste. It's all those things. They're all part of what you will do as reporters and photographers, and it's all important. And I would tell you, expect the unexpected, embrace change, embrace technology, set your goals high, you can reach them all, and it's all about what you want to achieve. And again, I would say try everything. The broader based experience levels you have, the more sellable you'll be, the more you will enjoy what I think is just a terrific career. I want to get some questions from you guys if you have any. I'd like to do first, though, is show you a couple of these stories from Afghanistan because I felt it was such an experience. I'd like to show them to you. The first one is the flight over, when we fly over what's left of the Twin Towers. And the reason it was an interesting story is these kids are excited and it's noisy on the plane and we're flying out of Fort Campbell and suddenly the pilot comes on, as you'll see, and say, we're now over ground zero, and the plane went dead silent. And everybody realized on the plane why we were there. This looking below at the smoldering remains is why these kids were going to war. We could roll the story.
I can use a little help on this one.
Finding Forrester with Sean Connery shown on the screen as the 101st Airborne winged its way to Afghanistan in hopes of finding terrorists, or maybe Osama bin Laden. An hour into the flight, a poignant scene below, the bright lights of Manhattan, the harsh white lights of Ground Zero, site of the attacks on the Twin Towers, the reason these men and women are fighting this war on terrorism.
Flown into this area many, many times, and that was always a beautiful scene down there. You're gonna miss it.
Our pilot is a vet. He understands the importance of this site to these soldiers.
It woke up a lot of sleepy soldiers and put a lot of pride in their eyes.
I'm glad to hear that. We have a lot of pride in these people.
As we head out over the Atlantic, Ground Zero behind us, the impact of the moment is felt.
It's just a good feeling to see that what we're going to do, what they did to us, we're going to get them back. Just show them you can't stop us. No matter what you do, we're still going to be number one.
Does it strengthen your resolve even more than it already is?
Yeah, I've been tired of waiting. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to be there. I'm ready to do something.
The next stop for these soldiers, part of Operation Enduring Freedom.
The second story I want to show you is after we arrived in Kandahar at the airport. The Marines were there. They were just leaving. They had just had a fierce firefight. The place was bombed, and everything was bombed out. And so the 101st came in, and the first job they had to do was fix the bomb holes on the runway so that more planes and troops could come in. And the story is about them repairing these holes in the runway, dodging sniper bullets while they do it, and knowing that the minute a plane lands, they got to go out and do it again because it's like asphalt. It's not going to stay permanent. As soon as one of those giant planes with all its cargo hits, it knocks out the repair, and they go back to do it again. Let's roll the story.
First filled with dirt, that didn't work.
Some planes would come in a little bit harder than others, and we would have to go out and adjust and recompact and fill it in and run the grader over it a little bit more. So
now a more permanent solution.
We have concrete, actual sand, and stone.
Repair work to this runway, these concrete patches are vital. If the runway closes down, the military can't get in its planes, which carry men, supplies, and equipment. So this work is vital.
And the work is constant because with every C-17 arrival, there is more damage.
Absolutely. Every day the runway just deteriorates a little bit more, and that's a very big plane. So when it comes down fully loaded, it does damage because the runway's so old. So
workers are reminded wherever they look, This is a war zone, an active war zone.
You feel threatened out here at all? You're right by the perimeter. The unfriendlies are not too far away.
Yeah, it is kind of hostile.
Despite the danger, the work must go on.
Repairs will keep going until they quit landing airplanes on this.
Bob Mueller, News 2 this morning.
The third story, obviously, we were over there fighting the Taliban, who was responsible in part for the bombing of the World Trade Center with the planes. But not everybody in Afghanistan is part of the Taliban. There are citizens over there trying to survive like everybody. A lot of those citizens were working for the government, working for the military on the Kandahar Air Force Base, doing what they could do to help out. This story is about their lives and who they are and how they may look like the enemy. They are not the enemy. These are folks that are caught in the crossfire as well. Let's roll the story.
These are not the Taliban, not the Al-Qaeda. They are Afghans trying to survive. These are the faces of people whose country has been at war for decades. Now they come to the Kandahar airport to do their part in the war on terrorism to help out the U.S. forces.
Whenever we first got here, they say, "Love America."
These Afghanis fill sandbags.
Bircha, Karwa, Tashakur? Oh, he said it's okay.
They are paid well for their labor.
They said they're buying better food for their family and just living better.
It's lunchtime now for these locals, but the work they do is vital because if the local Afghanis did not come in and do some of this work, filling sandbags, picking up debris, clearing obstacles, it would be left to the military.
Before they were here, we were all filling sandbags throughout the day.
Airman Josh Watch is learning Pashto from his new Afghan friends. In return, he teaches one man English.
He actually gets a big kick out of it.
These are not the Taliban. These are not the Al-Qaeda. These are Afghanis trying to reclaim their home. At the Kandahar airport, Bob Mueller, News 2.
And the last story I want to show you is kind of the results of war. I was privileged to meet a young Brentwood man, Andrew Wilson, who was in Iraq and who unfortunately stepped on an IED and lost both of his legs at the age of about 22. I met him as we were going to physical rehabilitation. My wife had had a hip replacement and Andrew was coming in for his first therapy lesson. And I introduced myself and thanked him for his service. And the more I thought about Andrew, the more I thought about, I want to tell this kid's story. They'd had a huge parade, a welcome home, which they should have had to recognize his sacrifice and his patriotism and what he's done for the country. My idea of the story was, and I followed him for a year, what happens after the parade stops? Andrew has to live with no legs. And while the parade is great and worthy and needed, there's life after that. And the stories we did for the next year were about Andrew's life. And this is the first one. This is when he's just now beginning to get prosthetics, just now beginning to start to walk and going through the pain of the fitting and the depression of not having his legs and being a young man. And so this is the beginning of what turns out to be a truly great ending to a story, but this is the first part. Let's roll that.
New tonight, since the war in Afghanistan began in October of 2001, nearly 1,800 Americans have been killed, another 15,000 wounded.
Specialist Andrew Wilson of Brentwood is one of those to bear the scars of war.
A member of the 10th Mountain Division, Andrew served and sacrificed, and now he is trying to get on with his life, a life that is forever changed for both Andrew and his family.
A proud little brother, a limousine, and a crowd of flag-waving well-wishers welcomed home an American hero, Specialist Andrew Wilson.
I hope that he can realize how much we appreciate him.
I mean, it was such a nice thing that they all did that. Obviously, it was pretty overwhelming when I got there, and there's miles of people, but it was so great, though.
Only 8 months earlier, Andrew's dad and stepmom and mother sent their son off to war. On October 19th, 2011, all their lives changed.
I stepped on a pressure plate IED in Afghanistan. Lost both my legs, one leg above the knee and one leg below the knee.
Andrew's mother had a premonition.
Very vivid, had no dreams prior to that about Andrew or anything bad with regards to him and being overseas. And within 10 minutes, we had that phone call.
I don't really remember much of the initial blast because immediately I was blind and deaf, but I remember almost everything after it though.
Telephones started ringing, the news terrifying.
Initial was total devastation.
I stayed with him for 7 days straight, 15 hours a day in his room, 23-year-old man, that's what he was at the time, and we never got to connect like we did during that time. And so it was almost a blessing for me to be able to spend that kind of time with my son and get to know each other.
The parade that welcomed Andrew home has ended. The well-wishers have returned to their lives.
You all right?
And Andrew Wilson is getting on with his changed life.
Therapy's going really well. Walking's getting a little bit better. Not as fast as I'd like to be.
It's a changed life for Andrew's family as well, his support group.
Try to find our new normal, is what we keep calling it.
It challenges them all.
It does, but just to see the look in his eye that he is being successful, that he sees progress, he sees he's going to be totally normal, he's going to live a totally normal life.
Oh, I'm very dedicated to getting forward. I'm not going to let this injury stop me whatsoever.
You know, it is hard, but we could also be having a much different interview right now, a much different conversation of losing our child.
He has set his goal to be up and walking and looking his buddies in the eye when they come back from Afghanistan, and he's going to easily do that.
Hopefully to walk with like a normal gait is what I'm hoping. I'm hoping pretty soon too.
Andrew is meeting his challenges head on.
That's pretty impressive.
He's determined.
I think there's a great plan for Andrew, and I'm excited to see what that is.
Andrew Wilson is an American hero. He sacrificed a lot to serve his country. And this 24-year-old is not letting that sacrifice get in the way of his goal, living life.
How proud of you of this kid?
Unbelievably proud. Unbelievable.
And for much of the next few months, Andrew will be at Walter Reed, continuing his therapy and finding the prosthetics that work best for him. Tomorrow night on Nashville's News 2 at 10, we will show you the therapy that is getting Andrew back on his feet.
Doing well already, it looks
He has
like.
a great family, too.
And that's why I do what I do. Telling stories like that it brings a tear to my eye just thinking about it. This was a great ending to this story. This kid has the best positive attitude I've ever seen of anybody. I don't know if I could have been as positive as this kid was, what he went through. Within a year of that video, within the year we followed, he was doing Paralympics, he was racing, he was running, he had moved into a house. The Wounded Warrior Project got him a handicap-assisted home. He had a girlfriend. Life was going good for Andrew Wilson and his family. He had accepted his challenge and was going to move forward. He wasn't going to let it stop him. And I consider this kid a real American hero. And it's just a privilege to get to know him. And these are the kinds of stories that it's a privilege for me to do what I do. So that's my story. Any questions from you guys that I can possibly answer as to what you would like to do? Go right ahead. I don't know the number, but there have been several. NBC lost a journalist in the war in Iraq. Bob Woodruff, who was actually a friend of mine, was injured badly in Afghanistan when his group went over an IED. He almost died. He survived, but it happens. A lot of photographers have been hurt. I don't know the number, but people have been killed covering wars. Yes, sir. Absolutely. It was terrifying over there, but I'll tell you what was the most interesting revelation was, these are kids, they're 19 years old, but they have sergeants watching over them, and those sergeants are in their mid-30s, and they hover over them like mother hens. They really do a good job of protecting these kids and letting them know, you don't get off of this line, this is where we've cleared the mines, if you get over here, there's still mines. They're strict with them, but they save their lives, so they really do watch out for them. But in a position like that, you never know what's going to happen. And there was gunfire every day. There was mortar fire every day. And that's part of being in a war zone. My wife had doubts about wanting me to go over there. I knew what I was getting into. At least I thought I knew what I was getting into. I wanted to go do it. I'm glad I did it. I don't know if I'd want to go back again after having been through it. I might. I just don't know the answer to that. It is dangerous. It is a little bit selfish. Had I gotten wounded or killed, my family's left alone too, but so are those soldiers' families. So I felt it was important for me to do my job, to go over there and try to tell their stories. So we talked about it, we discussed it, and my wife's a great partner, and she knew I wanted to do it, and she was for me to do it, but she had reservations, yes. Anybody else? Yes. I did. Working at that radio station for 2 years and then working 4 years at my my college station, it gave me really 6 years of experience, and I was able to produce a resume reel, as it were, of my broadcasts, of my newscasts, and I sent that out. I sent out about 200 resumes. I still have all the rejections today because it motivated me to keep going, and about the 210th one, I got hired. So I tell you to press on, but I applied. I just kind of moved a circle out from my home. I'm going to start here and move out and see where I go. I didn't care where I went. I wanted to do this job. It didn't matter. Peoria, I had a choice between Peoria and Wichita. Peoria was offering me $5 an hour more. I went to Peoria. That's a great question, and it's a little bit a self-inflicted wound, if you will. Not that people all have agendas, but there are people with agendas. And the way the media that I work in has changed is that there are now cable channels with agendas. And people get those, people get those confused. There's a difference between a commentator on Fox News and what I do on the evening news, and it kind of is all glommed together. So everybody thinks everybody has an agenda. I've been accused of being too Republican. I've been accused of being too Democratic. That tells me I'm kind of close to where I should be. But yes, it is a problem. Part of the problem too is because of the vastness of the new platforms out there. Everybody has a platform. Everybody can get an opinion out there. But guess what, folks? What's on Twitter is not necessarily fact. What's on Facebook is not necessarily fact. It's opinion. It's someone saw. And sadly, in my business, more and more often, those things are being used as fact, and then we have to go back and correct it. That's not a good sign, but it's what's happening because technology is moving so quickly. If we don't try to keep up with it, it just moves beyond us, and we make more mistakes now because of that than we ever did in the past. We do things now for speed because it's on Twitter, because someone else may have it that would be firing offenses a few years ago that are not anymore. So in that regard, it's a disappointing trend that hopefully will get corrected. Am I out of time? Maybe one more. One more? Anybody else? Yes. Well, I think we all have a bias. We all have, but if you understand you have a bias, do your best to tell both sides of the story. I mean, you don't agree with what this guy says, but that's his version. Get it out there. I just think everybody, to say you're not biased is wrong. We all have our built-in biases. We all have our beliefs. We all have our systems, our families, and that's where it all comes from. But you can put that aside. That's the profession we do. That's part of the job. The other key thing I would tell you is writing, to me, is the best key to all of journalism. Writing is a lost art. I love good writing. Write, and rewrite. Not enough folks concentrate on writing anymore. And if you're a good writer, you can do anything. I thank you very much. I think I'm out of time. I really enjoyed this, and best of luck to all of you. If I can ever help, let me know.
Bob, thank you so much for your thoughtful presentation and your vivid videos. We appreciate that very much. I want to ask, I see a few in the audience. I'd like to ask the winners over the past decade of our Bonnie Hufford Advisor of the Year to maybe be making their way down toward the stage. I'll have you come up on the stage in just a few moments. We may have all 10 of them here. I know that some have sessions later in the day, and they might be arriving to campus a little bit later. But we want to recognize as many of them as here in just a moment. It was great to see the photographers roaming around. That's how you do it. Great job. We do have, and by the way, some of the photographers might have been doing that for the photography shoot-off, or maybe just for your publication. at your school, but great job. We do have some Target gift cards for the winner of the photography shoot-off and the feature writing write-off and the sports write-off. And we also have a Target gift card for our door prize. I think when you checked in, you were given some vendor cards. If you did not get one, just go back to the desk. And if throughout the day you can sign, go around to the booths, to the vendors, and get a person from each booth to just initial your card, write your name on it. We'll put it in a little bin, and at the end of the day, we will draw a lucky winner of a Target gift card for a student and from a faculty member. So we encourage our faculty to do that as well. Bonnie Hufford was a legendary director of THSPA at the University of Tennessee. And before THSPA shifted to Vanderbilt and then to Lipscomb, Bonnie just guided THSPA for decades, and we appreciate very much what she did. So much so that we have named our Advisor of the Year after Bonnie Hufford. And we have a special set of activities today. We have asked all of the last 10 Bonnie Hufford Advisor of the Year award winners to come back and to give some sessions, some panel sessions, best practices in yearbook and in newspaper, and then in literary magazine and broadcast. All 10 have said they wanted to come back, and so instead of cramming them into one long session, we thought let's break them up by medium. And so during the first block, we have our yearbook session here on this stage. In our second block, we have newspaper here on this stage. And in our third block this afternoon, we're combining literary magazine with broadcasting. But I'd like for as many of them who are here as we do them year by year, to just let all of you stand most recent on this end. But as I call your name first, I'll have you just stand over there to the side, and we will welcome you and congratulate you at the very end. From 2007, Miss Joy McCaleb, Upperman High School. I'll ask her to get on the stage and stand all the way to the end. Joy is now a mentor with JEA, the Journalism Education Association, and she will be helping mentor advisors, younger advisors in the state. Joy, if you want to, come up on the stage, and that way everybody can see you a little bit better. And next to Joy, we will ask Teresa Lockhart. I'm not sure if Teresa is here. Teresa? Maybe she'll be here in just a few moments. 2008 was Teresa Lockhart, formerly of Coffee County Central High School. 2009, Denise Croker, the Harpeth Hall School. In 2010, Miss Joy O'Ettle with Hume-Fogg Academic Magnet High School. Hey, Joy. This is like graduation, isn't it? 2011, Jan Little, formerly of Brentwood High School. In 2012, Stephanie Crichton, Hardin Valley Academy. In 2013, Miss Heather Nagel, Christ Presbyterian Academy. Heather is also our state director for the Journalism Education Association. Appreciate all that she does for Tennessee with JEA. 2014, Ronnie Adcock, Brentwood High School. We learned in the last week or so that Brentwood's broadcast is a finalist for the best TV newscast in the nation with the Emmy Award, so we celebrate them. 2015, David Flannery, John Sevier Middle School. David and his students have been up already a long time today. We're glad that they're here on the front row. And 2016, Nola Henderson, Jefferson County High School. And if Teresa or Jan have come in, we'll ask them to come down, but we'll see them throughout the rest of the day. If you will, please help us honor all of the last 10 Bonnie Hufford Advisor of the Year Award winners. Many of them are still advising. Some have moved on to other things like teaching and being full-time parents. But we appreciate the contributions they have made and continue to make for the state of Tennessee. Thank you again.